Good evening and welcome to our final GamedayU basketball show of the year. I'm your host Elise Jones and I'm joined here tonight by Michael Martin, Ben Thomas, and Stone Weber. Tonight we will be discussing if UCLA's run in the tournament is an all-time Cinderella story, predict who's going to win it all, and hear an update on the women's NCAA tournament from our women's team. Before we go any further in the show tonight, we want to let our viewers know there will be no footage from the NCAA tournament in this show. The NCAA's video policy on their tournament games is strict, and to avoid any legal issues, we'll only be using regular season and conference tournament footage. So to kick things off, two Sooner stars, Austin Reaves and Davion Harmon, have declared for the NBA draft. So what do you think is next for these guys? Will they be drafted, and if so, where will they fit best? Michael, let's start with you.
Well, with Davion Harmon, I was a little bit surprised when he decided to come out for the draft, but I have him going as a late second to undrafted. With Austin Reaves, I think he is a potential top 10 pick. April Fools, I got you. You guys were thinking it was something else. But anyways, there's still a path to the league for these guys if they are second-round picks, if they're undrafted. With Harmon, I think that he can be a Jalen Brunson type, and not necessarily your primary point guard, but he can give you some great playmaking off the bench. He can shoot, he can defend a little bit. He's great as an off-ball player for a real superstar. As for Reaves, I think that his comp would be somebody like an Abdul Nader, somebody who's 3-and-D, really loves to drive, can attack closeouts, not necessarily your primary playmaker, but can make some secondary playmaking passes off some screens and some cuts, but not necessarily the guy. But I think that's around where they'll go.
Yeah, I like those takes there. Personally, I think Davion Harmon's going to go undrafted. And why I think that is his numbers really don't jump off the page when you're looking at the types of point guards in this draft. You got like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Suggs out of Gonzaga. They are putting up numbers that warrant being drafted in this draft. Now, I think though he will return to the Sooners. They do have that ability with the NCAA rules now to return, which I think would be better for him to help his draft stock because he's about to be the #1 guy on the Sooners team if he returns. Now, Austin Reaves, though, I agree with you. I like the Abdul Nader kind of comparison, that 3-and-D guy. He really shoots well when he's out in the open. And I think with that playmaking ability that he has, it just allows the floor to space, and it gets a lot of guys moving. And I think Reaves probably would go in the second round. I don't see him as a first-round guy, maybe late second round, just because of the type of numbers and the production he's done in these past years. But I do think he could be somewhat of a quality bench player in the NBA for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think Harmon's going to go undrafted, and I think Reaves could go second round. I think the Magic would be a great fit for him. But I mean, who wouldn't be a great fit on the Magic? They have nothing. They traded away everything. But then again, Reaves had nothing else to prove at the college level. He had 16 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He led the team in all the stats, right? But Harmon had so much left to prove. He had everything left to prove. He had 7 points freshman year, went up to 12 his sophomore year, and his field goal percentage also went up 11%. I get why he didn't want to come back just because, new coaching staff, players leaving, but if he comes back, he'll be the #1 guy, can raise his draft stock.
I absolutely agree. I hope he comes back. As for Reaves, I just think his main obstacle in the NBA is going to be how he adjusts to a role. Because I know that he was pretty unhappy at Wichita State, where he was just a guy shooting in the corner, and that's why he came to OU, to be a primary playmaker, but I think he's going to be more stand and shoot in the NBA.
Now with these guys gone, what will this Oklahoma team look like next season? With a new head coach, recruits, and transfers, what should the Sooners expect?
As Sam Presti once said, we're going to explore the roster. Guys with like Gibson, Harkless, Hill, Williams, I think Queth might not come back, but you're going to have a lot of versatility on the roster, a lot of like up and down scoring, really high pace. I think the Alabama game was a really good peek into how this team can play in terms of pace and defense, and just guys flying around. We're going to play fast pace, hopefully, with the crew that we have, and just a lot of variable playmakers. A lot of this team, OU, last year was just too much Austin Reaves reliance, and I think next year you are going to have an opportunity for a lot of younger guys to grow.
Yeah, I definitely see it as a quote-unquote rebuilding year for this team. But honestly, I think it's just going to be a very rough season for the Sooners. And they're losing the scorers like Brady Manick, Austin Reaves. Hopefully Davion comes back, which would be a huge boost for this squad going into next year, along with a lot of bench players entering the transfer portal. They're losing a bunch of guys that could be key contributors to the team next year. Along with that, a new head coach, a new system. I'm not going to call it a train wreck, But the outlook's not looking too good for the Sooners team next year. Definitely see them towards the bottom of the Big 12 Conference after having such I would say probably a successful year in their mind, making it to the tournament and stuff. I don't think they make it this next year.
Don't hang your heads too low, all right? We get it. Reeves, gone. Manick, still don't know. Manick comes back, could be a big contribution. But I think that with if Harmon comes back, that'll be good to have a key number one. But also Gibson coming back. The problem was too much reliance on Austin Reeves. All we had, ISO with Reeves, pick, come up, get chopped in the corner, pass it out. Manick misses a three. That's all we had. But if you have Gibson, Hill, and Harkless coming back, more rounded offense, I think this team will be better.
And I'm excited to see how Harkless plays this next season and probably a bigger role.
I think if he gets more minutes and more shots up, he'll be a lot better player.
Now let's send it over to Dylan Rivera to hear this week's breakdown of Purdue's Zoom action offense from the 2018-2019 season.
In the 2018-2019 season, Matt Painter's Purdue Boilermakers ran a unique motion offense that put Carson Edwards on the map and made senior Ryan Klein a legitimate threat. The Black and Gold had one of the most efficient offenses in the country and made it all the way to the Elite Eight before the eventual national champion knocked them out. But how did this offense work? How did it lead them to such a deep run? Let's break down Matt Painter's 2018-2019 Zoom action offense. This action right here is called pistol action. Coming off a dribble handoff into a screen. But to describe the speed at which this happens in the Purdue offense, we're calling it a zoom action. Ryan Klein uses the screens to get a couple of late threes here against Indiana. Purdue loves these little zoom action plays to get quick hitters up for Klein and Edwards. Now with that established, we start to get into the real fun of the offense. The start of this play is a simple decoy to give Edwards time to get to the block. Once there, he does what's called ghosting. He doesn't actually set a screen, he just acts like he's going to. That's when Wheeler, number one, does a screen action called a twist and fakes using the screen and actually stops his momentum and sets a screen for Edwards. Another screen from the big man Harms helps clear Edwards up for a three ball. On this one against Tennessee in the tournament. Again, the top of the court is just a distraction to keep the defense watching. And this time, it's Klein on the far side, twisting and setting Edwards' first screen. Edwards will get a second screen from Eifert and a third from Williams on his way out to the three-point arc. This gives Edwards plenty of time and space to get a shot off. Now same game just a couple minutes later. Watch how Purdue adjusts to get a good shot. The twist from Eifert, the screen from Harms, and you're probably thinking just like the Volunteers. Get out there and keep Edwards from getting to his spot. But the Boilermakers know that. As Tennessee tries to rotate and deny, they get caught watching. Eifert takes off to the three line, and with a screen from Eric Hunter, he's got room to pop it and drop it. Here on this one against Wisconsin, the big man switches on and off of Klein, putting him in position to close out on Edwards coming off the screen. He does so, but Edwards is smart enough to read it, split the defender and the screener. A short mid-range jumper off the glass, and it's two more for Edwards. So let's take a look at some plays where it didn't work out so well. The defense put a stop to it. In the Elite Eight, Tony Bennett's Virginia team did their homework, hedged nearly every screen. On this one, Klein comes around, but Diakite plays the passing lane. This takes Purdue out of their rhythm, and if it wasn't for an immediate mistake by Diakite following the good play, the Boilermakers might have been stumped. Here against Michigan State, Edwards gets doubled off the screen and makes a good pass, but Harms hesitates to shoot after a good closeout from Xavier Tillman. As a result, Edwards forces the issue and turns it over. Let's go back to the Virginia game for one more look. Edwards comes off the triple screen and is swarmed by the defense. He passes out, and the Boilermakers start scrambling. Klein has to go off script and attacks the rack, but Diakite is quickly there with the help defense to contest the layup. Carson Edwards was drafted by the 76ers in the second round of the 2019 draft and traded to Boston, where he now plays as a dangerous scoring backup point guard. As for Matt Painter's Boilermakers, they finished with an offensive rating that slotted them at 9th in the country back in 2019, and it helped the Black and Gold finish with a record of 26-10 and nearly punch their ticket to the Final Four. At least that's Purdue's Zoom action offense. Back to you and the crew in the studio.
Coming up next on Game Day U, we're going to send it over to the women's team to hear an update about the women's NCAA Final Four.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Day U. I'm Tyler DeLuca, joined by Grace Burgett and Amaya Ward. We're back together as a full team. How are y'all feeling today?
Feeling super excited.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad to have everyone back.
Yes, me as well. And we got a lot to talk about in this women's tournament. It has been absolutely nuts. But we're going to go a little bit in a review to start it off. So Amaya, talk to me about the Iowa and UConn game and that freshman matchup.
That freshman matchup was unbelievable. I was very much impressed with both Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers. I mean, Caitlin Clark is really well with ranging in her passing. I mean, she takes really long range of shots that added a lot of pressure on UConn's defense, which I don't think they were expecting. I mean, she had 21 points. I was overall very impressed with her performance. Paige Beckers, we all know she is unstoppable, but one strength that she really pulled against Iowa is her anticipation against the defense. I mean, she always knew where the ball was. She always knew where her teammates were. And she also had 21 points. I mean, that freshman matchup was definitely one for the books, and I was all very impressed.
I agree. I mean, this was a great matchup in my opinion. Both of these girls are just such great players. But in my opinion, I think that Paige Beckers had the better game. But let's go a little bit into their stats. Caitlin Clark is a 6-foot guard averaging 26 points per game, 5.9 rebounds, and 7.1 assists. I mean, that's just insane. Insane for a freshman. And Paige Beckers is a 5'11 guard averaging 20.1 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, and 5.8 assists per game. They're very hard to kind of differentiate because their playing styles are so similar. But in this particular matchup, I think that Paige Beckers had the upper hand and just played an all-around better game. She had 9 rebounds to Clark's 3, and she had 8 assists to Clark's 5. And a big statistic, I think, is that she only had 2 turnovers where Clark had 5 turnovers, and that makes a big difference in the overall score of the game. So overall, I think they're both very similar players, great players, but I think that Paige Beckers won this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with y'all both completely. I mean, this is a tandem that's going to be compared forever. Like, I don't think that they're ever going to be able to differentiate, between the two at this point. But it was more than just the matchup. UConn versus Iowa was a fantastic game. And the depth of UConn showed out. Kristen Williams and Avina Westbrook both had incredible games. Williams had 27 points on the game, and I feel like there's probably a little bit of chip on their shoulder because there was so much talk about the matchup going into it. And Avina Westbrook had nearly a triple-double with 17 points on 7 of 9 shooting, 10 assists, and 9 rebounds. She had an incredible all-around game. Paige Beckers also almost had a triple-double, so that depth of UConn really showed out within this game and kind of, for me, overshined the matchup a little bit because they were just so incredible. But UConn also just had another incredible game against Baylor, but it was ended a little controversial. So talk to me about it.
What a game, first of all. I mean, Baylor had it. They were so close. I mean, Baylor has great defense. I've said that before, and I will continue to say it. Baylor's defense is unstoppable. I mean, they had 11 blocks in the first half alone. They left Paige Beckers with 0 assists, and she's averaging 6 assists per game. I mean, Baylor put UConn in that 10-point deficit, and I was just so sure they had it, but UConn did what they had to do. They came back. I definitely think that if the refs had their good eye in and they caught that foul against Dejani Carrington, Baylor might have been able to pull that upset and win the game.
I was thoroughly impressed with Baylor that game. And on the first show of the season, I said that Baylor was my fraud in the top 10, and I am fully taking that back. They really impressed me in that game against UConn. And looking back at the stats, I honestly have no clue how they didn't win. They won the rebounding battle against UConn. They had more assists than UConn, and they had fewer turnovers than UConn. They had everything that you need to win a game except for the points. Dejani Carrington led Baylor with 22 points off the bench, might I add, and Paige Beckers led UConn with 28. I mean, that's just insane. Very high-scoring game. And as for that final play, honestly, I think it could have gone either way. I know a lot of people are upset about it, but that's how March Madness is. Big plays happen, and refs can't always make the call, so I think they made the call that they could in that moment.
Yeah, no, I think if you if you're gonna force me to pick, I think it was a foul. But that's just how the game goes. Basketball is a human game, and that's mistakes going to be made. But the thing is, they weren't calling fouls on both sides the entire game. So I understand the people that are upset about it, but for me, that's how the game goes. But now let's send it over to Sharon Earhart for a Sooner story.
Imagine what it must be like for Sherry Cole of Oklahoma. 6 years ago, she was a high school coach. Now she has her team here playing in the Final Four.
A good coach is important to any sports team. They turn players into stars and dreams into realities. The University of Oklahoma got the privilege to have a long-lasting legend, Sherry Cole.
She was able to recruit good players. She was able to be able to sell the university and what she had a vision for. And it's amazing to me that it seemed like it took a long time, but in a way it didn't seem like it took that long at all.
I watched the progress. I thought Sherry did an outstanding job of coming in with almost a defunct program and turning it around and made it into what it is today. The cupboards are not bare, whoever takes it on.
And there are so many top basketball coaches that intimidate people, but not this native Oklahoman.
My favorite memory of Sherry would probably be the 2002 national championship. I went to San Antonio for the game and we stayed in the same hotel with the team. And it was so electric and it was so exciting. And I remember Sherry coming down the stairs as the team was getting ready to go. And I said, "Hey, good luck, coach." And she said, "We're going to win." And they did.
She didn't just teach her players to be great simply on the court, but taught them to be great members of the community.
One time I was on some board and I said, "Hey, we need a house indoor painted." I said, "Do you have any kids that might be interested in some volunteer work?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll get that worked out." And, she came like the day we asked, and like the whole team came. And they didn't even need ladders. They were just tall.
Her will to win made so much noise that everyone who watched her knew that what you see is what you get.
She wants to be a winner, wants her team to be a winner, trying to instill that positive attitude and finding the switch in everybody's talent and how to turn it on. And she knew all the switches. She knew. And I remember hearing her speak about certain players that they hadn't really found that next level yet. But they would. She never put them down. It was always, they will get there and they will produce.
In addition to being the pinnacle for OU women's ball, Coach Cole was instrumental for OU women's sports as a whole.
I really believe that she made a huge difference in women's basketball here and around the nation. And wow, what a success story.
She may not be Sooner born or Sooner bred, but Sherry Cole never failed to live down that Southern Sooner style.
Sherry has a personality. She is a very attractive woman. She's very spunky. I mean, when someone messes up, she's right off that bench. She's running down the sideline with those high heels. She's going to get somebody.
Sherry was not this person in the media and this person at home. She's the same type of person all the time. And, that's how you know when a person's genuine is when they, they're the same person no matter what setting you're in. She's done a great job and I'm proud to know her.
Shannon Earhart, GamedayU.
everyone, and welcome back to GamedayU. I'm Tyler DeLuca, still joined by Grace Burgett and Amaya Ward, and we have so much to talk about. The Final Four is looming, and we have so much to discuss. So, Amaya, let's start with this first game, Stanford and South Carolina. What are your thoughts?
Okay, this is going to be definitely a tough game and the game to watch. But if I had to pick, I'm going with South Carolina. That is just because Stanford, they did have me very much worried against Louisville last night, but they stepped it up. They did what they had to do. They turned 10 offensive rebounds into 9 second chance points. I mean, that was really well for them, but I just don't think they're going to be able to stop South Carolina, who has been killing it all tournament. They have beat every team by double digits. I mean, Zia Cook and Aaliyah Boston are not playing around. South Carolina is used to playing these hard teams, and I mean, last time they met, Stanford was in the Final Four in 2017, and they took that win, and so I'm sticking with them.
Amaya, I've got to disagree. I'm going to go with the top overall seed Stanford for this matchup. I mean, as we saw in Tuesday night's game against Louisville, this Stanford team has got grit. They've got what it takes. They were down by 13 at the start of the third, and they just absolutely went off. They went on a 17-2 run and were 5 for 5 from behind the arc in the fourth quarter. They ended up winning the game by 15 points. That is insane. Stanford leads South Carolina in all statistics across the board. And don't get me wrong, I think that South Carolina is a great team. I mean, you've got to be to make it to the Final Four. But unfortunately for Tyler, the Final Four is as far as South Carolina is going to get because Stanford is going to come up with the dub.
Well, I disagree completely. The thing is you're comparing the Louisville defense to the defense of South Carolina. And that first half is a lot more what you're going to see against South Carolina compared to the second half that Stanford was able to put together. And don't get me wrong, it was incredibly impressive, and that three-point shooting was top-notch in that fourth quarter. It felt like they could not miss. But South Carolina is not going to allow that because the defensive wings have so much length. And they also have the ability to get into the post because Stanford did a pretty solid job of making it into the post when those three-point shots weren't falling. But they weren't going against Aaliyah Boston. They didn't have those wings and the guards with as much length as South Carolina had on the defensive end. It's a completely different matchup, and if Stanford is going to live by the three-point shooting, they can also die by it. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and we're going to see that first half story play out against South Carolina. And I also kind of trust South Carolina's offense a little bit more in the sense of the style of it, because this is a clash of styles through and through. Stanford is a three-point shooting team. South Carolina is a more grind you out on the inside with Aaliyah Boston and kick out if you have to your guards. And I trust that style a lot because Aaliyah Boston has the ability to take over any game. And I think that she's going to be able to do that against Stanford, and they're going to limit the three-point shooting and come out with the win and make it to the national championship. So the next game, Arizona and UConn. Amaya, what are your thoughts?
UConn is winning that game, no question. I mean, Arizona, for a Pac-12 team, they made it pretty far. I've been overall really impressed with them. They have All-American Ari McDonald, who played amazing against Indiana. I mean, she had a double-double, 33 points, 11 rebounds. But I just don't think that's enough to go against UConn. I mean, they're going to have to limit Paige Bueckers, which, I mean, good luck with that. And I just think UConn is definitely going to blow them out, no question.
I agree. I don't think anyone can question that UConn is going to win this game. It just depends on by how much. And I agree. Ari McDonald is an amazing player. She's a big WNBA prospect, but you're not going to beat a team like UConn with one player. And I actually had Indiana beating Arizona in my bracket, if that tells you anything. Arizona recorded losses to 2 unranked teams this season and only have 2 players averaging double-digit points. I mean, that's just not enough. They don't have the manpower to win this game, and I think that UConn is going to take control early and come up with the dub.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything you guys are saying. McDonald is incredible. She's had multiple 30-point games throughout this tournament, but it's just not going to be enough because Arizona just doesn't have the depth to match up. You have Paige Bueckers, you have that one matchup there, but what are you going to do about Westbrook? What are you going to do about Williams? They just don't have the depth to match up with that or the overall talent. So while I think Arizona can put up a fight with their three-point shooting, they average only 6 threes, 3 makes per game. And when they get that, they're 10-0. But you're going to need more than 6 threes if that's going to be your way of beating UConn. So I just don't see it happening in any way. Now, though, it's the big question. Amaya, who is leaving San Antonio as the national champions?
UConn, no question. I mean, this is their 13th consecutive run to the Final Four. Gino's a vet. He knows what he is doing. I mean, they have multiple powerhouse players on their team, like the one and only Paige Bueckers. We talk about her constantly, but not only her, Kristen Williams, even in Westbrook. I mean, UConn has got it down, and numbers don't lie. Look at how they've played all year. Who really has been able to stop UConn? That matters. I definitely think they can handle Stanford, and they can definitely handle South Carolina. UConn's got in the bag.
I'm going to have to disagree once again. I mean, we all know what an amazing team UConn is, and Gino, I mean, like you said, he's amazing. But I just don't think that they have what it takes. Their best player is a freshman. She's never been here before, and I know she's been playing amazing, but the finals are a whole different story. I'm going to have to go with Stanford. They're my favorite team right now. They totally caught me in that game against Louisville. I picked them to win it all a few weeks ago and whenever we had our show in Kansas City, and I'm not switching it up now. Let's talk about their depth for a second. This team has so much depth, which is what every good team needs this far into the postseason. Their starting lineup is unstoppable with Kiana Williams, Haley Jones, Lexi Hull, but their bench players are just as strong. I mean, let's go back to the Louisville game again. Ashton Prechtel, a sophomore forward, came out in the second half and had 16 points all in the second half. I mean, this Stanford team gets hot late in the game when you need it, and I think they're going to have the momentum going into the finals to win it all.
It's no question who I'm going to pick. From the first week we started this show, I have said the South Carolina Gamecocks are going to win it all. And I'm not backing down now. I'm sticking with my pick for multiple reasons. One, their defense. Just look at the Texas game and you can find everything that you need to know. Guess how many points Texas scored in the fourth quarter? 0. 0 points with the projected #1 overall pick in the WNBA draft. Do you realize how ridiculous that is to go 10 minutes without scoring at all? And that is purely based on the length and the defensive prowess of the entire team and the culture that Dawn Staley has set at South Carolina. She is absolutely incredible across the board as a coach. You know, her time as a player has certainly soaked into everything that she does. But South Carolina also has the size, because I think they'll beat Stanford, like I said. But we compare it to UConn. You know, we talk all about how are we going to guard UConn. They have Westbrook, they have Williams, they have Bueckers. Who's going to guard Aaliyah Boston on UConn? Where is their size? They have no size at all to match up with Aaliyah Boston, and I think that she has the ability to absolutely dominate this game and lead the South Carolina Gamecocks to another national championship and add just another tick on that Hall of Fame resume for Dawn Staley. And make sure you stick around to GamedayU as we send it over to the men's side.
Welcome back to GamedayU. Before we jump into the coaching carousel and talk Cinderella stories, let's hear from Dylan Rivera on the top 5 plays from the last decade of tournaments.
Thanks, Elise. We're counting down the top 5 between 2010 and 2019. It's Georgia State and Baylor in 2015. Remember this name? R.J. Hunter. The Sun Belt Conference's three-point assassin pulls it from deep to put away the Bears. The 14 seed upsets the 3 seed in the second round. The jumper from outside falls 2 seconds before the buzzer, and Hunter finishes with 16 on the night. And how about Dad and head coach Ron Hunter falling out of the chair in celebration? March 15th, 2018, Loyola Chicago and Miami. The 11 seed Ramblers need a miracle, and they get it from senior Dante Ingram. 64-62. The 3-ball puts Sister Jean and company up 2 with less than a second remaining. The southpaw Ingram eliminates the Hurricanes and helped Loyola Chicago make their infamous Final Four run. UNI and Texas. It's the first round in 2016. Texas hits a shot to tie it up and they think it's going to OT. But not if Paul Jesperson has anything to say about it. How about that shot? The half-court heave to win it and knock off the 6-seed Longhorns. One crossover, launch it, Splick-ack. Shaka Smart and the rest of his Austin crew leave in disappointment, and UNI would move on to nearly upset the Texas A&M Aggies in the second round. Michigan, Kansas, March 29th, 2013. A 4-versus-1 matchup in the Sweet 16. In case you forgot, 2013 was the year of Trey Burke. Down 3, under 10 seconds to play, a screen from Mitch McGarry clears up space, and from nearly 40 feet away it falls! Tie game! Step back, pull up over the defender from another area code, and it drops! Look at this angle of it. How tough is that? The Wolverines win all the way to the title game before falling to the Louisville Cardinals 82-76. April 4th, 2016. Nova and UNC for the national championship. Archie Diacono drives down the floor, the dribble handoff to Chris Jenkins for the title. It's good! The celebration begins. One of the greatest shots in not just recent memory, but in all of college basketball history. 77-74. The Wildcats win it in jaw-dropping fashion. At least that's the top 5 from the last decade's worth of tournaments. For the final time, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Dylan. Last week, we discussed Oklahoma head coach Lon Kruger's retirement. Today, North Carolina head coach Roy Williams announced his retirement after 33 seasons and 903 wins. The Hall of Fame head coach led North Carolina to 3 NCAA titles and went 485 and 163 in his 18 seasons at UNC. He's known for his accomplishments on the court and will always be remembered for the legacy he left in the world of college basketball. And another big story today, Texas Tech head coach Chris Beard will be moving down south to Austin as he was just hired as Texas's new head coach. So in this coaching carousel and with all of these changes, what are your thoughts? What's the future of these programs? Michael?
Well, you mentioned it, but I think OU might be in some bad news, trouble coming soon in terms of Chris Beard going to Texas. He already built a great program at Texas Tech, got them to the Final Four, and got great players such as Mac McClung, Zaire Smith, and Jarrett Culver. And now when he's going to Texas, where they got great players such as Kevin Durant, LaMarcus Aldridge, Mo Bamba, Tristan Thompson, Jackson Hayes, a bunch of guys like that, but they couldn't win. But now you get that coach, that's when you get to the next level. And as far as UNC, Roy Williams, great career, I would keep it in-house in terms of UNC blood for your next hire, and I would go after Jerry Stackhouse from Vanderbilt.
No, yeah, I definitely think OU should really be scared about that Chris Beard hire down at Texas. But for me, one of the most interesting hires was close to my home at Indiana, with Mike Woodson coming down from the NBA and getting hired by Indiana to be their next head coach. I think it's somebody who knows the school. He played there as a point guard at the University of Indiana. And I think he can kind of be like a Juwan Howard, come back, kind of rebuild a program that had a lot of promise and was a powerhouse. Indiana used to be that powerhouse in the Big Ten. I think he can restore that. And then like you said about UNC, I 100% agree. They need to keep it in-house, keep that Tar Heel blue blood going. And I like the Stackhouse idea. I would probably go with one of their assistants. I know one of their assistants, I'm blanking on his name right now, has been there since like 2005. And he's been Roy Williams' second-hand man. I think that guy knows the system. He knows how to win there as well. I think I'd like that hire. Probably keep it in-house, though. Yeah, I agree. I think Rick Woodson, that's a great choice. I think I'm going to go with Shaka Smart. Shaka just never could get things going at Texas. He had 2 seasons of 20 wins. Marquette in that span had 3 seasons of 20 wins. He made the tournament 3 times and lost every single time. He was up big, lost in overtime, buzzer beater, then Abilene Christian at the end. I think what Shaka needs is a basketball-first school. At Texas, there was just way too much expectation for him. He had all the lights on him, everything like that. He was getting outshadowed by Chris Beard, who is now the coach of Texas, which I don't know if you guys feel like, I think that's pretty bad move on Chris Beard, going from Texas Tech to Texas, pretty big rival. But I definitely think UNC should also keep it in-house, keep it what they've been winning. They've won 3 national championships. Just keep the same system going.
Now, switching gears to focus in on the Final Four, let's talk about a team who has made history with their Cinderella story, the 11-seed UCLA Bruins. This is the lowest seed of any team that's made the Final Four, and UCLA is one of only 5 teams to be seeded that low and make a run this deep. So is UCLA the greatest Cinderella team of all time, or is there a team who maybe didn't make the Final Four and has a better story?
Not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso once said. Instead, I'm going to go back to the absolute best Cinderella team in terms of the Butler Bulldogs back in 2010. Gordon Hayward, Shelvin Mack leading the way. Brad Stevens is a head coach now with the Celtics. Just the great run from that team. And, I mean, do any of us know where Butler University is? Okay, glad you know. But it's great to just have these smaller schools rise up. It's the whole David and Goliath thing. It's Duke versus Butler, Coach K, who a lot of people don't like, and they got so close. That Gordon Hayward shot right at the end from half court just came up a little bit short.
I'm going to go the different 11 seed that has made it to the Final Four, and I'm, again, sticking close to home with Loyola Chicago's Final Four run from 2 years ago in 2018. The debut of Sister Jean. This team was a clutch team. They beat number 6 Miami by a buzzer beater. Then beat number 3 Tennessee in a close game, and also went on to beat number 7 Nevada, number 9 Kansas State, and that Nevada game ending with a tough shot at the end. This kind of put Loyola Chicago on the map. They did go on to lose against number 3 Michigan in the Final Four, but 4 top 10 wins against top teams in their bracket. This team really came out of nowhere, and they got the hearts of everybody, obviously with Sister Jean. But they locked down defensively. They played well offensively. They bought into Porter Moser's system of that team-first mentality, and you really saw that during that run. And speaking of Porter Moser, I would love to see him at OU. Personally, I think he's a great head coach. He's one of the best coaches in college basketball right now, and he will definitely have a bigger job probably next season.
Yeah, I think Porter Moser is going to be he's going to be very popular. Got a lot of interviews coming up. But I think I'll go with the team that Butler faced in 2011 Final Four, Virginia Commonwealth. It is what put Shaka Smart on the map. Virginia Commonwealth was the first four team to make the Final Four. The second team was actually this year's UCLA Bruins, coached by Shaka Smart, and a lot of people didn't even think that they were going to make the tournament that year. They went on to beat 11 seed USC in the first four, 6 seed Georgetown, 3 seed Purdue, 10 seed Florida State, and number 1 seed Kansas. And they fell to Butler just a little bit short in the Final Four, but it put VCU on the map. They went on to give Oklahoma some trouble in 2016 in the second round. But it put Shaka Smart on the map and definitely put VCU on the map.
Now on to another team in the Final Four, Gonzaga. If this Gonzaga team wins it all, will they be considered the best basketball team of all time? And if not, who is?
I'm going to disagree with Gonzaga being the greatest team of all time, even if they win it. It's Throwback Thursday. I'm going to throw it all the way back to 1972 to the UCLA Bruins, who went 30-0. Their average score of their games was UCLA 95, their opponent 64. For the non-math majors here, that is a 31-point differential for every single game. And on top of that, another legendary game for UCLA, they held the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to one shot attempt 10 minutes into the second half of a game. One shot attempt, not one make. They attempted one shot in 10 minutes. They had freshman Bill Walton, who averaged 21 and 17, future NBA MVP, champion, Hall of Famer, maybe the greatest college basketball player of all time, definitely the greatest college basketball broadcaster of all time. Henry Bibby, father to Mike Bibby, who was a consensus All-American. And next up, we have the greatest coach of all time in college sports, John Wooden. I just think greatest team of all time right there.
John Wooden definitely coached
Goats
a lot
all
of
around.
really good teams. Yeah, definitely. But I agree with you. No, I don't think so as well. They do have ranked wins over teams like West Virginia, Kansas, Iowa, and Virginia, but those were all fairly close games. We are noticing that their big blowout wins are against teams like Pepperdine and Norfolk State, just not teams that really live up to the tough competition. And also, I think their Final Four run has really not been tough at all. I'm more impressed with a 2011-2012 Kentucky Wildcats team. Why? I think they had more talent than the Zags team. Yes, Jalen Suggs, Drew Timme, Corey Kispert, all those guys, but this team had Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Terrence Jones, Marquise Teague, all guys that went on to play in the NBA and dominated in college. They only lost 2 games throughout the season and dominated against a number 2 seed, a number 3 seed, 2 number 4s, and a number 8 seed in their March Madness bracket on their way to a national championship. Yes, Gonzaga is good, and yes, if they win, they might be considered one of the best teams of all time, but this Kentucky path was a much, much harder than this Gonzaga team, and I think this team also had better talent than this Gonzaga team.
Yeah, the West Coast Conference is nothing like the SEC, and I'll pick another Calipari team 3 years later, 2015, famous phrase, 38 and done, right? This team had 6 players drafted, 4 in the top 13. Devin Booker was drafted. He didn't even start. In this game, he didn't even start, right? But the problem was why they may not be considered the best team of all time. The best team doesn't always win, right? And that's what we've seen in the past, right? You could have said OU was better than Nova in 16, but they got blown out. You could have said Kentucky was a better matchup for Wisconsin, but they just couldn't get it done. The Harrison twins, Andrew and Aaron, coming out. It just they're the best. They're the best team of all time in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, best teams don't always win. Zion, RJ, Cam
Right.
Reddish of recently, I think makes a good point there. Yep.
Now moving forward a bit, the 2021 NBA draft is just around the corner. Oklahoma State's Cade Cunningham declared for the draft today and has been projected as the #1 pick all season long. But what are your thoughts? Who are your top 10 draft picks?
Well, with 10 guys, I'll just touch on 5 here, and that's the top 5. Those are the guys who matter. Cade Cunningham, he's going #1. He's a full package, handsome, good at basketball, does everything. He shoots well. He silenced all the critics on all the things people don't think he can do well. Houston, they take Evan Mobley. In that part of the draft, you just take the best talent available, even if he looked like he was on a milk carton against Drew Timme. Next up, Jalen Green to Detroit. They just need shooters. They need a guy like that who can come in, fill it up, take a bunch of shots. Orlando, they get Jalen Suggs. They haven't had a good point guard since Penny Hardaway. I think it's about time that they have a playmaker. And I'll wrap it up with Jonathan Kuminga, who can slide right in with the Cleveland Cavaliers and I think have an immediate impact as a 3-and-D player.
I like your top 5. Mine is very similar. I also have Cade Cunningham going #1. Like we said, undisputed best player in this draft, hands down. Evan Mobley, #2. We saw him come alive in March Madness as well. He had a really good tournament. Jalen Green out of the G League, player coming straight out of high school, has a lot of talent, a lot of potential. I like him going over Jalen Suggs as well. Jalen Suggs, to me, is the second best guard in this draft behind Cade Cunningham. Obviously, a good shooter, able to facilitate the offense, very athletic as well. The difference I have Kuminga going 6. I got Scotty Barnes out of Florida State going 5. I like the style he plays, the way he plays, has a lot of tenacity to it, and I think he just kind of fits that Cleveland Cavaliers team really nicely. But Kuminga's another good prospect as well, and so I think those two are kind of a toss-up. But I kind of like Scotty Barnes just a little more.
As you said, our top 5 is very similar. Once again, Cade, #1. You can't argue with that. He's the best player in the draft. There's no doubt about it. Then Evan Mobley came on. USC no one thought they were going to do very much in the tournament, but they came on and almost got to the Final Four, then run into Gonzaga. Then you have Jalen Suggs, obviously, best player in Gonzaga, second best guard in the draft. Jalen Green, the #1 player in high school coming out of the class of 2020. With the Magic, they traded away their entire team. Anyone they can get will help. I don't know if you guys saw that graphic. They had a starting lineup. No one averaged more than 10 points a game. It's pretty sad. Then Kuminga, another G League player. G League starting to come up. A lot of players starting to think of that, take the paycheck instead of coming to high school, coming to college, but yeah.
Coming up next on GamedayU, our analysts make their picks for who's going to the national championship and who wins it all. Welcome back to GamedayU. It's our final segment of the show, but before we get into the final 4 games, let's take a look at the GamedayU bracket update. Coming in at first place, still by a pretty big margin, we have Ben Thomas. Next up, we have Saul Meyer and Will Blessing, and finally, Colton Soley. Now, before our analysts predict the winners of this weekend's games, we have a little game of our own. We played this on the first show, so why not bring it back for the last one? So we have 4 popsicle sticks, all with the names of a Final Four team, and I want you to break down the team that you draw. So, Michael, you can draw first.
All right, I'll look away here. All right, UCLA. Sounds good. Let's get it. UCLA, they're mostly built on their defense. They're switchable. They really get into you in terms of just being disruptive. They vary their style of play in terms of zone, man coverages to keep the other team on their toes. They remind me a little bit of a traditional Syracuse team in terms of how much they rely on their defense, low turnover numbers, and then just hope that they can make some shots on the other end, which has been the key in terms of offensive efficiency. When they are making a bunch of shots, they've been better. But, you know, you can't rely completely on Uzang and Jaquez to heat up at the right time. UCLA is a great team. They have no hero ball, no ISO ball. They get into a lot of great sets. I just love this team, and I think they're going to be successful going forward.
All right, Ben, you're next. You
Pick
can go
four.
ahead and draw for Stone, too.
Yeah, there you go. Sweet. Come on, come on. Yes, I got the team I wanted to talk about, and that is the Baylor Bears. Finishing 26-2 this season, first in the Big 12, outscoring opponents by an average of 83 points to 65 points. They beat winning teams like Illinois, Kansas, Texas, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, the list goes on. Yes, they did get bounced in the Big 12 tournament by Oklahoma State, so they don't have that Big 12 championship to their name, but I have a good feeling they might make a run for that natty. But let me talk about this backcourt duo of Davion Off-Night Mitchell and Jared Butler. To me, the best backcourt tandem in college basketball. Both of these guys should be lottery picks, if not first-round picks. They got a lot of depth. Mark Vital, Matthew the Mullet Meyer, helping that offensive flow as shooters and solid on the defensive end. They beat Hartford, took down Wisconsin, Villanova, Arkansas, and now is going to face off against Houston. I think this is the only team that can contest with Gonzaga.
And I got the team I'm matching up with in the Final Four. I got Houston. Houston
down.
has dudes. Houston can win in a variety of ways. They showed that against Rutgers. They were down big, came back on like a 14-4 run. And against Syracuse, they showed it was their defense. They pulled a Syracuse against them, were able to shut them down. And they showed in the ACC tournament versus Cincinnati that they can score. They scored over 90 points in that game. Marcus Sasser's leading scorer, while Quentin Grimes, he's a sniper from outside, but Reggie Chainer's he's a big body in the interior. But Dejan Giroux is the X factor for this team. He averages 10 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 4 assists, and he also shoots 44% from the field. He was the high shorts, like the 4-inch inseams, and he also had 10 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists in the Elite Eight versus Oregon State.
Well, that leaves me with Gonzaga, and who doesn't want to brag about the only undefeated 30-0 team? I'll give you some of their most impressive stats. Drew Timme and Jalen Suggs. Timme and the Stash are having a monstrous NCAA tournament. He's averaging 21.2 points and 7.5 rebounds in 4 games. He's coming off a 23.5 rebound performance. Suggs, potentially a top pick in the draft, alongside USC's Evan Mobley, but Gonzaga just had an 85-66 victory over USC and Mobley. They're holding the NCAA D1 record of winning 27 consecutive games by double digits, attempting to become the 8th national champion and just the 2nd in the last 45 years to spend the entire season ranked at number 1. Everyone knows Gonzaga's great. So now, let's make your Final Four predictions. Baylor takes on Houston Saturday at 4:14. Who do you have going to the national championship?
I've got Baylor. I love that backcourt that Ben talked about with Butler, Teague, and Mitchell. They average about 41% from 3, which is the best in college basketball, and 46.4 points combined. I think they get the win.
Of course I'm going with Baylor. They've won each game in the tournament by more than 10 points, except that Arkansas game when they won by 9. This team's firing on all cylinders right now. Give me the Baylor Bears.
Baylor, you can't disagree. Off-Night, he is the man.
You're going against Houston,
no
though?
doubt.
Come on,
I
man.
think they'll come out. It'll be a little bit slow, right? The dome effect. Teams tend to shoot a little bit worse from the 3 in the dome, but I still think Baylor comes out on top.
Next up, the Cinderella story keeps on dancing Saturday. It's UCLA versus Gonzaga at 7:34 p.m. Who's moving on?
Gonzaga wins this. They haven't lost yet. Don't think it starts this game either.
Nope, blowout win for Gonzaga. UCLA's got no chance.
Timme and the Stash, unstoppable.
And to wrap things up, who's taking home bragging rights and claiming the title of the 2021 NCAA champions?
I've got Gonzaga. I think they win this one. Mark Few cuts the nets down with the Bulldogs.
I got them in my awesome bracket that's ranked number 1. I got the Baylor Bears beating Gonzaga. That backcourt tandem's too much to handle, and I think they got a lot of depth that can run with this team, this Gonzaga team. I really like Baylor in this one.
I think Gonzaga's they're going to get it done. I think Baylor does have a better backcourt, but I think Kisper will be the X factor. He's kind of been struggling from 3 in this tournament, but I feel like he's really going to turn it on in the Final Four.
Yeah, but you're not trusting the mullet man, Matthew Meyer, to lock him down.
I can't.
Mark Vital, all those guys, man. No, I think Baylor, yes, this Gonzaga team is so dominant, but they really have not faced a team like Baylor that can run, can compete with them, can score efficiently and lock them down.
You just have no faith in Gonzaga at all.
I think the biggest the undefeated run has to end at some point. And it's going to be
next season.
It's going to be to Baylor. Obviously.
They're going to go undefeated.
Streak is over.
You guys had your piece. Let me get this one. With an NBA type of offense and defense from Gonzaga, they are the most sophisticated team in NCAA. They probably run more efficiently than some NBA teams. I just think that's going to catch up to Baylor. They don't get enough stops against them. Gonzaga's winning this one.
They do have a really solid offense. I'll give you that. They run up and down that floor really fast. They move well in transition. But this Baylor defense, they are very, very quick. They can go under screens, over screens. They can lock you up real quickly. You think you got an open shot? Nope. Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell, they're right in your face. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a really good game, a very close game as well. Probably like a 1 to 2 point difference.
Question, how much of a shot does UCLA have?
I wouldn't say much. They've had a good run here in terms of guys. Their last 2 teams they played in the tournament have shot under 50% from the free throw line, which definitely helps. And in these big games, it's 1 at the free throw line. I don't think that they're going to be able to pull it out with that defense.
I would say Houston definitely has a better shot against Baylor.
Yeah, no, definitely. I have to agree with that one. I think UCLA is going to be very overmatched here. I think it's going to be probably a 20-point difference at least
but
from
all that
Gonzaga.
matters is we're getting the game everybody's wanted. We get Baylor Gonzaga in the title.
Yeah, you get the best
That's
two
true.
teams. The best 2 teams all year. We're going to hopefully get that. Fingers crossed, because you never know. Houston can play upsets. But if Houston makes it, it's not as exciting of a game as Baylor Gonzaga would be.
No, it'll just be a letdown. I mean, everyone's obviously whoever's going to be there, their fans are going to be excited, but everyone wants an all-time national championship.
I mean, Gonzaga's won 29 of their 30 games by 10 or more points, and the only time that they didn't was against West Virginia, which was a 5-point margin. So I see what you're saying there.
They're beatable.
Thank you for watching Game Day U live from Studio D at the University of Oklahoma. It's been nothing short of a shocking season, and we are so glad to have brought you through it with us for our first ever Game Day U basketball series. To our producers, Dylan Rivera and Pierce Leffelholz, directors Colton Cooper and Junior Prieto, our technical directors Sydney Bollier, Will Blessing, and our graduate assistant Jared Thomas, thank you for all the time you've put into the show. Thanks to our reporters John Barry and Shannon Earhart, and to all the staff, Barry Orr, Lynn Franklin, Ken Fisher, and David Candy, for all of their help along the way. Lastly, thank you to our wonderful crew members who show up night in and night out to make this show run. So on behalf of Michael Martin, Ben Thomas, Stone Weber, I'm Elise Jones. Have a good night.